ever die.
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows.
Hello. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Beyond the Shadows podcast. We are your intrepid paranormal investigators. I myself am Victus,
I'm Aeon.
And I'm Paul.
and we are here to talk about something amazing tonight.
This is a good one. I can't believe we didn't think of this before.
Yeah, I thought about, I got an idea what I want to do for the next episode while I was researching this one.
Good.
And piece of me thinks that Paul's going to have some input on this. I don't know why, but like my intuition is telling me that Paul's going to have input.
On the next one?
Yeah. Do you want to know now or do you want to wait to the end? You want to know?
Now.
Okay.
We want to know now.
You want to know now? We're going to do, next week will be MK Ultra.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My jam.
Paul's shaking his head. What do you know about MK Ultra, Paul?
Well, listen, ancient alien theorists suggest that.
Jeez.
I'm going to get my hair all crazy. It's going to be amazing.
I need to, you know what? I wonder if I have time to quickly find an audio clip of dude saying ancient astronaut theorists suggest. Let me just see if I can find it right quick. How was your weeks? Tell me about your week while I look this up.
It was all right. I finished a whole lot of stuff on that painting I'm working on. I finished some big areas, and now I'm making a model of the rings, the big power rings, so I can get the lighting right on them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing today, was straightening out clear and non-clear tubing to make it look like those sections are floating around the non-existent core. So
Okay, well, I'm
and
gonna have to.
we had to get Paul a new car.
Oh yeah. How you like the new car?
It's okay.
Just okay.
It'll do. Quite sufficient.
Every day is like, man, this car's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
but
it was like to have a nice car.
my wife, her car. So for those that don't know, my wife's last car was a 2008 Volkswagen Beetle, and the engine control module went out, which it's $1,000. And as crappily as the vehicle ran, like, well, think maybe it's time to upgrade. So she got a 2022 Chevy Trax, and this is her first vehicle with a smart entertainment system. And she was telling me one day, she's like, I don't know what happened. I plugged in my phone and a map came up, and I was like, that's Apple CarPlay. That's what it does.
That is Apple CarPlay. That's funny.
I said, welcome to the
Well,
world.
I thought I was turning on the turn signal the other day, and the car suddenly became possessed of the devil and sped up. But turns out it was really just the cruise control. And the cruise control. I was almost going to call Andrew and say the car's possessed to the devil.
And then he realized it was the wrong of one of the 4 stalks around the steering wheel.
There's one of my coworkers, his wife got a new car, and he said that he could keep it in cruise control, and that has sensors in the front of the vehicle that when he gets close to another car, it'll keep pace with that car.
Yep.
And that's the first time I'd heard about that. I thought that was pretty cool. Technology these days, man. My car is from 2013, so it doesn't do all this fancy stuff. I'm lucky that it beeps when I back up and get too close to something.
I was gonna say my 07, the newest thing in it is the stereo. Everything else is still from 07.
Yeah. I recently learned that my car, I mean, y'all have seen my car,
Mm-hmm.
has a factory 6-inch subwoofer in it.
Mhm.
I did not know. I couldn't figure out why the speaker sounded so good. I was like, why? I was like, okay, I want to put a little speaker in the back.
To cover up all the bad mechanical noise.
It's my mom called my car a sewing machine because that's what it sounds like when it's idling. Really loud lifters on that thing all the time. That's just the way they are. But
I did have a kid back up to me in a parking lot, back into the front of my car in a parking lot.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was fine. His was not.
That's what it was like when I drove my Lincoln. So I had an 87 town car. That was my first car. And y'all seen the Lincoln Lawyer?
Yeah.
That's the car I drove. That was the car that he drives around in is the car that I had. And it is a solid steel monstrosity. And I had a brand new Chevy Silverado back into it.
Uh-huh.
It practically totaled his Chevy, like tailgate fell off, all sorts of stuff, crushed the whole back end of his truck. There wasn't a scratch on my car. He was like, how is your car in such good shape? I was like, it's a solid steel car. And you just ran into a 3-inch thick piece of steel on the front that just happens to be chrome plated.
Yeah, it's still a body on frame car then. Like it was, wasn't even unibody yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
so
was.
he backed into that giant steel bumper I made on the front, and it crushed it. It's high enough that he ran into the bumper, but it crushed his whole.
Oh no!
It was a 4Runner, so it crushed the whole taillight and the steel around it. And I was like, man, I guess it sits a little higher than I thought because those aren't low.
I see 4Runners all the time, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's what you got. No, you have an Xterra?
Yeah, I have an Xterra. We also have a 4Runner. We have a 05 4Runner, and I've got an 07 Xterra.
I see Xterras all the time, and I'm like, okay. Yep. Those aren't too bad of vehicles. Not really.
They're fun. They're fun. They're fun. If you like a simple car that doesn't tell you what to do, that's what I like about it. Like a whole bunch of lights can be on the dash, and it still is going to let you drive and do whatever. Just like, hey, we just don't have any assistance, so just just FYI, do whatever you want, but we checked out, so just so you're aware. Same with the 4Runner, it doesn't care. The other day, it said like traction control and 4-wheel drive, like all kinds of stuff was the lights were on from like a battery voltage thing. Changed nothing about it driving.
The snake like, chafing the car light came on, and
the two, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I have to decipher Paul's descriptions of car warning lights.
I do have one.
Sometimes it's very difficult for me to think of the most absurd thing I can imagine.
The flying saucer one, that took me a while to figure out. It was the brake sensor warning light.
Oh,
it's a circle with little
that
dash
was the
circles
dinner
around
table.
It. The what? The dinner table. Okay, the dinner table. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And he's always so exasperated. Go ahead.
I have one quick dad joke.
Excellent.
And I may or may not have told on this one or not. I don't remember, but it is a good one and I like it. What has 5 toes and isn't your foot?
I don't know.
My
What
foot.
is
The dad joke the other day, and he wouldn't even laugh.
That's so terrible. My foot.
There you go.
That's
My
so
foot.
terrible.
Write that one down. Put that one in your Rolodex. All right. So we promised it, and we're coming back. We're talking about it this week. This week we are covering the Philadelphia experiment. So Paul doesn't know anything about this. I really hope you didn't Google anything this week.
I didn't.
I tried to keep him as honest as I could.
Okay. So I have like broad stroke story with so I'm kind of bummed out because I remember there being firsthand accounts in the stories that I heard. However, if you directly search firsthand accounts, the Philadelphia experiment, you get the same thing every single time. There are no real firsthand accounts. No official firsthand accounts.
Okay. What about unofficial?
unofficial. We're going to cover those.
Okay, good. Good. Because I was just say they made a whole hour-long program about it on History Channel once upon a time. So
Yeah,
there's got to
You
be
know, if
some,
it was on History Channel, it
there-
has to
yeah,
be
there's got to
true.
be some stuff.
absolutely.
They can only make so many dramatic recreations.
And besides, what channel is Ancient Aliens on?
I mean,
History Channel.
Right.
it's
so we know
definitely
it's-
gone downhill. I agree. The History
What was
Channel's
that?
gone to the Legends Channel.
The Legends Channel.
Yeah. The Hearsay Channel.
Oh no. Let me restart this docker right quick.
Yeah, I
This
wish
thing
it happened. Channel.
just-
Wouldn't it be cool if channel? Well, you know, now they do like what is it, Mystery of Oak Island and all that kind of stuff now. And I'm like, I really wanted the Mystery of Oak Island show to pan out to be something.
Oh my
turns
gosh!
out
Right?
It's just
And they
nothing.
just stretched it out and stretched it out, found some things, didn't really find some things, and finally just quit.
They just recently they found a coin, a Spanish coin.
I mean, that's good, but considering
Odds
all the
are-
stuff that in the beginning of like all these like tiers of like, you know, construction and stuff they expected to find, I'm like, dude, just dig the hole. Just
Yeah.
dig the hole. They
Yeah.
kept like messing around with the hole that was there and the hole was not. I was like, dude, you guys have a whole show with like a bunch of money. Just dig the hole
Dig the hole.
and let's find out. Like, you know, the dude doing it before with his steam operated crane and stuff messed it up, but like now you have all this stuff and all this money and all these investors, and we all want to know. Just get an excavator out there and pull it all up.
Yeah,
Pull it
the,
all
ma-
up.
the amount of money that they spent. You know, if there were but the ocean's coming in. It's 6 generators out there big enough to pump 5 million gallons an hour. Put them in that hole and turn it on. The ocean's not that strong. It's going through the ground.
I think they just
Pump it
wanted to
out.
stretch it out. I think they're afraid
Yeah.
they might actually find something, then that'd be it.
Yeah, the end of the show.
No more mystery. Just be called the Oak Island.
The Oak Island. So how do we start this? How do we break this to Paul gently? You want me to just roll with my research and see where that takes
Yep.
us?
You can. I could start with why I like this one.
Yeah, please.
So, I like this one because it's a convergence of several things that come up a lot in our weirdness stories: U.S. government, secret research, and right around the time of the invention of nuclear weapons, right? And you know, the U.S.'s military involvement and all that stuff. So
Sounds like the Hallmark red flag's a fraud to me.
It's funny because it's true.
I mean,
Because anytime you have something like this, U.S. government, secret research at some university in Russia no one's ever heard of, you already know.
no, I mean like so all the UFO encounters or the spike in UFO sightings comes after the advent of nuclear weapons.
Well, except
Mhm.
that one that crashed in Texas in the 1800s and they buried the alien in the.
True
Yep.
enough, but
Cemetery.
I mean the spike in it.
Yeah.
The U.S. Involvement, or at least denying of UAPs altogether,
Yeah.
right? And even stories of weirdness altogether. They're just like, yeah, there's nothing to substantiate that. Everybody don't watch what the right hand's doing, kind of thing. And it's a mix of that kind of stuff again. So
Yeah, this is a really very interesting story. I will say that what is energy saver
also
turned
much
on?
also a
Okay.
much bigger object in this case.
A much what?
Much bigger object than usual in this case.
I might know
hold on.
what this is actually.
Hold on, my laptop's not plugged in for some reason. I need to figure out what's going on.
About to have a dead laptop.
Yeah, we are. Oh, come on. You cuss. It's always something. Always something. Wait, let's see if this one's plugged in. Because that'll tell me if I accidentally shut off. Oh, I may have actually shut off the Surge protector. Oh, yeah, there we go. I accidentally shut it off. My bad, y'all.
All right,
Close
we're
save.
back.
Battery status 6% available and plugged in. Okay, jeez, we got close. Good thing I noticed. So, let's just start with what I got written down, and if you want to interject and throw some concepts out there, because here's the problem with this one. It's not one story, and this is what everybody believes. It's 1,000 spaghetti noodles, and I picked the most prevalent one. Which, I mean, this is something we kind of run into a lot, but we're going to do our best here. So, the Philadelphia experiment is a conspiracy theory and urban legend that has captivated imagination since the mid-20th century. It alleges a secret United States Navy experiment conducted during World War II at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. The story involves attempts to make a warship invisible to radar and possibly teleport it through space and time. So I got a little bit of background here. The experiment reportedly aimed to develop the technique to make ships invisible to enemy radar using electromagnetic fields. Some versions of the story also claim that the experiment was related to ideas from Einstein's unified field theory, a theoretical framework attempting to unify general relativity and electromagnetism. The U.S. Navy destroyer escort USS Eldridge is said to have been the focal point of the experiment and was supposedly codenamed Project Rainbow. So,
Didn't they make a movie about this?
they did. I haven't seen the movie.
I saw it a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, if you saw the movie, you got the broad strokes. Probably what we're going to follow today. So the story suggests that it takes place in 1943. Equipment installed on the USS Eldridge generated a powerful electromagnetic field, and two events were typically described. One of them was radar invisibility. The initial test made the ship invisible to radar, and this outcome, while seemingly successful, is less controversial than what allegedly happened next. And the second outcome was complete disappearance and teleportation of the entire ship. In the second test, the ship reportedly vanished entirely from the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Witnesses claimed the USS Eldridge was briefly observed hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before reappearing in Philadelphia. Some versions of the legend even describe time travel elements, with the ship being teleported to either the past or the future. So, that's the broadest stroke I can give you of what the Philadelphia experiment is. Are we kind of on track of what you understand so far?
Yeah, that's how I understood it. Was that they were attempting with some sort of device to disturb. I mean, I'm not sure how you're going to use a magnetic field to disturb visible light, and not affect other things adversely, right? You can bend light with magnetism. They've shown it with with lasers and things like that, showing that you can bend the course, but the amount you would need to obscure an entire ship and bend light all the way around it, the ship is steel,
right?
So there's some issues there. Some of the things that people report having happened, though, are not explained. There's some of the adverse effects are not explained by even incredibly strong magnetism, which I'm guessing.
We're gonna get into that.
We're gonna get into. It gets super weird then.
It gets really weird.
And I don't doubt, that part doesn't seem far-fetched to me, that they were trying something, right? Trying to make them invisible either to radar or to whatever, right? It's when we get into the teleportation and or time slippage thing that it starts to get weird. And I don't remember how the account of it being in Virginia comes about, but I seem to remember that as well.
Yeah. So that was part of it. Let's see, what is next in here? The consequences. It's this next section is labeled horrifying consequences, not just consequences.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
so there were two tests. Here's we're getting into the gray area here because this was probably like a black site project. So if there are official government documentation of this, I think we're still like 10 or 15 years away from declassification. So wait, no. We should have already been declassified. This is 43.
Unless it's still considered a national security risk. They don't nothing ever necessarily has to be declassified. It's still
Right.
considered pertinent.
Yeah, because I know that there was some stories from World War II that have come out recently within the last few years that were
Yeah.
declassified.
Yeah.
Some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that movie, the League of Ungentlemanly Warfare. That
I haven't
was
seen it.
so it's just about the beginnings of the British Special Forces and how it sort of started to come about. It was a group of 5 guys that were sent in to steal a supply ship, or really they were sent to destroy a supply ship, a Nazi supply ship that was resupplying U-boats, and
Mhm.
they realized they couldn't blow it up, so they stole it, the
Oh.
whole ship.
Oh.
5 guys. Yeah, they stole it. So, but it was part of Churchill's classified personal
Mhm.
writings from during the war. And so it was declassified probably a while back because now they've written a whole movie and everything with some pretty big name actors in it. And so, yeah, stuff gets declassified, but there's nothing in that that's going to be pertinent now other
Right.
than, that it was done.
But if you can teleport and make a whole ship disappear, that's probably still needs to be a secret.
It's never not
Yeah.
going to be. Yeah, it's never.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
never not going to be national secret stuff. Even if you could cloak an entire battleship, make
Yeah.
it invisible. I mean, that's if you ask common science, everybody's going to say no, you can't do that. So if they could, they're definitely not gonna make that available.
Right.
So I'm not surprised. I mean,
One of my favorite declassified stories from World War II was what they ended up doing was they wanted to feed Hitler misinformation, and they had tried a bunch of different ways before, and they couldn't find an effective way for him to find the information surreptitiously and him believe that it's true information. So this was like a what's the word I'm looking for? A Hail Mary move, and it happened to work. They dropped a previously dead United States Army guy from a plane with misinformation in his pocket, and intentionally strapped him to a failed parachute
oh,
and dropped him in Germany.
oh,
So it looks like he was dropped in, doing James Bond stuff, and
Right.
eventually they found his body, and the information was passed along to Hitler, and it ended up that one dead body changed Hitler's entire course for invasion and made him go to Normandy instead, which changed the entire course of World War II.
oh, right.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. For those interested, I will plug another podcast right quick. It's called The World's Greatest Con. This guy used to be a magician, and now he studies, like, he does a podcast about cons, how people get
Mhm.
conned, and I'm pretty sure that was season 1.
Oh, that's
And
cool. They also had
wonderful
all the giant blow up toys.
Yeah, the inflatable
All the
tanks
blow
and
up,
stuff.
all the
Yeah.
inflatable tanks, inflatable Jeeps and stuff. I remember seeing a video of them, like, declassified footage of them moving them. You just have one guy on either side, just lifting up the canvas blow up tank and positioning them, setting them in rows. I was like, that's so good. That's
Yeah.
such a good idea.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked.
I'm not mad. So, I do have. Give me just a second. I have pictures. So, of what we're about to talk about.
Oh, good.
Of the disappeared ship.
No,
Worse.
a little different. Where did this episode go to? Oh no, did I not transfer it? Hold on. Bear with me, folks. I thought
Probably
I
the most believable part about this whole story is the idea that the U.S. Navy was attempting to find a way to make a ship disappear.
Yes.
Seems like something that would be worth researching, given how many U-boats the Germans had and how many of our boats they were sinking with them, with pretty reliable accuracy and regularity. So it would only be natural that we would want them to not be seen. So probably they really were researching that. How they were trying to do it, I don't know.
So I want to get into some of the quote unquote horrifying consequences.
Yeah, let's do that.
The experiment allegedly had devastating effects on the crew. According to reports, some crew members became fused to the ship's metal as if they were melded with the structure. Others were said to have experienced severe disorientation, madness, or spontaneous combustion. A few reportedly disappeared permanently or became stuck in time, fading in and out of existence.
Ah, yes, that was my favorite one. Yeah,
Mhm.
almost like ghosts.
It
Yeah, they'd
reminded me
appear
of,
and disappear.
yes, like 5 or 6 quote unquote firsthand accounts said that these dudes were there, and then as the second experiment was running, they started fading in and out. I think the words they used were like saying like a projection movie, but the light bulb was fading. But I did find some artist recreations of the soldiers fused to the metal.
Oh,
And
based
these
on
were really difficult. The quote unquote firsthand accounts. These were really difficult to find. I only found 2 of them.
okay.
I did a reverse Google search to try to figure out where they came from, and it just took me back to the website I got them from.
Okay.
I will say one of the images may or may not have come from New York Times.
Really?
I cannot legally say because I may or may not have legally asked to use the photos.
Could have come from anywhere.
Could have come from anywhere. It may or may not have come from New York Times. They have an extensive photo collection from World War II, and they offer like reprints of like newspaper clippings from World War II. And this was in that thread of World War II stuff. So let me grace you with this first one.
That's an artist recreation, right?
Yes.
That is?
Yes. Quote unquote, an artist recreation.
Because that looks like a photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was some type of installation where people were explaining, and these were supposed to be dummies, but
Okay.
they look very, very human, don't they?
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder. So it's in back of my mind, I was like, this is cool. These are these artist installations, and this is actually how they worded on these websites was artist installation with heavy air quotes.
Huh.
So take it for what it's worth.
And that's the Eldridge?
This is the Eldridge. This is the ship that may or may not have disappeared. So
Because Eldridge is very close to Eldritch.
I don't follow.
You don't follow? Paul,
Mm-mm.
can you give us a definition for Eldritch?
Oh no.
So it's always I always hear it used in conjunction in H.P. Lovecraft novels
Uh-huh.
about the elder gods, the eldritch power of like Cthulhu and all that ancient
Yeah.
arcane eldritch powers.
Yeah. I have one more picture. Do you want to see it?
Yep.
Ooh! Check that madness out.
Huh.
And what's great is this is exactly what I was thinking. This is exactly
Yeah.
what I was figuring it was going to look like.
Yeah.
I think I've seen those pictures before.
I have not. But this is wonderful representation. This is about what I was experiencing, or about what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like the foot sticking through. That's kind of great.
All burn up.
Yeah. So these were the reports. There was lots of unofficial firsthand accounts of this happening. People stuck through the wall like this. This is the one that I heard the most, was the face
Mhm.
sticking through. Like he was walking and the boat shifted, but he stayed in the same position.
Yeah.
And when the boat settled, he was
was
stuck
stuck.
where he was. Yeah. Lots of reports of people holding their hands while they expired.
Oh,
because-
the people in the wall,
Yeah.
holding the hands of the people in the walls.
Yeah. Yeah, it was apparently horrifying. But I mean,
Because how do you get somebody unstuck when they're fused with steel?
right. So it makes you wonder,
Also-
is it like solid steel through them? Is it just steel around them?
Well, that brings up an interesting question. So, our bodies are predominantly a whole lot of space. Like
Yeah.
in between in the insides of molecules and in between the molecules is a shocking amount of empty space, right? Held back by the strong and weak atomic forces, right? But I don't know that just because there's space there that means you can shove something else in there, because you'd be applying new atomic
Right.
forces between individual molecules. So yeah, the question would be, is it like a weird sort of honeycomb amalgamation of flesh and steel and they're
Yeah.
stuck? Or did it just straight up slice them off? But then why is the arm stuck there? Why
Right.
wouldn't it just like
Flop-
fall off?
Yeah. Because like these pictures here, the arm sticking through, if that was a perfectly sized hole for my arm, pull it back.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, no, I think they were stuck. I think they were
Yeah.
stuck, but I don't know whether or not it was because they were fused with it, or like you said, they were just sort of guillotined as it re-solidified.
Right. Yeah. I feel like probably something fused.
Yeah. So then the question is, where did the rest of the metal go? And the
Yeah.
flesh, both.
Yeah.
Both.
Or what if-
there's some weird cheese wheel out there of steel in person.
Yeah.
A little plug out there floating in space time.
A bisection of a person's face.
Yeah, face and steel kind of honeycomb thing going along, just floating out there in the ether.
So it makes me wonder. So we know that electromagnetism can produce heat.
Right.
So what if my brain says this contraption was bolted to the ship, most likely?
Mm-hmm.
So my science fiction brain tells me whatever the contraption is attached to would be affected by the contraption. So
Right.
let's say maybe the ship became superheated, and when it bisected these people, it instantly like vaporized parts of their blood, and that's what filled in with steel.
Well, I guess my question though is, if it was that hot, how did the whole ship maintain integrity? But I hear what
don't
you're
know.
saying, because if you're
Yeah.
trying to make a giant electromagnet, a giant steel ship is a great conduit
Yeah.
to do that, right? It can be your
Yeah.
big conductor. But I'm not even sure that I understand how, in what way that, because electromagnetism comes in a lot of, I mean, it's a force in itself, but the way you generate it and the frequency in which you use to oscillate it, it's just a huge spread of
Yeah.
approaches and outcomes. So, I mean, not knowing what exactly they were trying to achieve or what they thought it would do makes it hard to know what what kind of
Right.
effects he'd have. But the heat would also explain why so many people seem to have been caught on fire or burnt
Yeah.
or whatever.
The spontaneous combustion. Yeah. There was.
And there has been evidence that super strong electromagnetic fields applied to the brain can cause very altered states of consciousness to the point of brain damage and or you know hallucination, insanity, things like
Right.
that. Think of an MRI cranked way past what it was ever designed for. Bring it up by like
Right.
10, 20 fold and put somebody in it. Very different result.
Oh yeah. So I remember hearing reports from the people that didn't become fused, or what have you. They were looking out towards sea when it happened, and there were reports of a shimmering light coming down and enveloping the ship.
Ooh.
So my brain goes to like, what was that? Was it Helen Hunt Sphere?
You
Where
mean
where she gets
Contact.
the contact. That's it. That's it. Yes.
Contact? Yeah.
So remember when the sphere thing is spinning up and there's like waves of light coming down?
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing when they said like shimmering translucent light coming down around the ship. That's what I picture. It's
I was always wondering what they were trying to depict with that.
right. Yeah, because that was, I believe there was some electromagnetism involved.
Yeah, and I was wondering if they were
It's
trying to
been a while.
depict gravitational waves, even though you wouldn't be able to see them. If they were trying to depict that for like a movie setting,
Right.
because there's a thought that probably if we could harness gravitation more than say like the strong and weak nuclear forces, if we could figure out what gravitation is and actually use and produce gravitation, that would be your answer to all these instantaneous travel questions
Right.
and splitting or bridging of space-time. And that's what the Einstein-Rosen bridge is. It's a big gravitational well that
Right.
causes at least mathematically causes mathematics to go haywire at its center. Things go to full zero, which shouldn't be possible. As things compress down, you shouldn't actually be able to get down to a zero, and
Right.
it does. And so that's where a lot of the theories about what black holes could be on the inside come from, because it sends all of our known understanding of physics out the window if you try to calculate it from the outside, and there's no way to measure it from the inside.
Okay, so here's the Philadelphia Naval Yard.
Okay.
I was assuming it was on the coast. It is not.
Oh, it's inland. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I mean,
Well, it's
sure.
along a navigable waterway.
Yeah. So they probably came out here somewhere. And I know where this naval yard is. Right down here.
The Virginia one.
Yeah. This is actually really close to me. It's like an hour away from me. So they made it. So supposedly, they teleported from way up
Mhm.
here down to here.
Mhm. And they may have done it at the shipyard. I mean, it's not. I mean, the reason shipyards are usually inland or in an inland section of water is you don't want a ship that's not operable out and available for attack and sabotage.
Right. I
So
wonder
you
how
put it
wide
somewhere
this is.
slightly inland. Probably
Let's look
pretty
at this.
freaking big. Is that a tanker there in the picture?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah, there's an
aircraft
aircraft carrier. That should give you an idea how big it is. That's a whole aircraft carrier. So big, really big.
Trying to get a street view. I don't think
And
we're
you
going
can
to
see
get one.
some of the other slips where they, like, the other direction, over on the end.
This way?
Keep going. Yeah, look,
Oh.
there's a slip. There's a whole slip for a giant ship.
Ooh.
That's probably able to be blocked off, the water drained, and then you can dry dock the ship.
Okay, so this is pretty big channel.
It's big.
Big. Okay, so they theoretically could have done their testing right here.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like there would have been more witnesses.
Right.
Then again,
I
if
don't
they're
know. It's hard to witness an invisible ship.
dun dun dun. All right, so I would guess they could have done it right here, but I guess they probably came out to sea. It doesn't really say.
Yeah.
It just says at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. So let's touch on the origins of the legends, shall we?
Shall we?
So numerous investigations and analysis have debunked the Philadelphia experiment as a hoax or a misunderstanding. Scientific impossibilities. Experts in physics argued that technologies described in the legend, such as large-scale invisibility or teleportation, were far beyond the scientific capabilities of the 1940s. Einstein's unified field theory, cited as the experiment's basis, was incomplete and speculative. Yeah, Einstein was still alive back then,
Yeah.
so he was still working on it.
Uh-huh.
The USS Eldridge logbooks do not show any unusual events or presence at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard during the alleged time. The ship's movements during 1943 align with standard naval operations. No credible evidence supports its sudden disappearance or teleportation. The legends likely arose from misunderstandings of degaussing, a naval technique used to reduce a ship's magnetic field and protect it from magnetic mines. While this could be confused with invisibility, it has no connection to radar or visual stealth. The story's persistence owes much to the Cold War era fascination with government conspiracy, secret technologies, and paranormal phenomena. I disagree.
Degaussing, that's an interesting way to point. Because, I mean, if you're a fan of Fallout, you know the Gauss gun is the rail gun in the game, right? The magnetic rail rifle. But degaussing, so essentially they're trying to add a polarized magnetic field to the boat so it doesn't pull in magnetized mines as easily. That's interesting.
It seems to me
that, first of all.
Yeah, I didn't know they were doing it either.
I didn't know they were even doing that in World War II, but
it seems to me like a really broad stroke government government excuse. No, we weren't playing with electromagnets. We were degaussing.
Also, I agree that officially we didn't have that sort of technology then, but we also, officially have been using, for instance, satellite vaporizing lasers for much longer than we ever started to talk about it. Even my dad, when he was in the military, when he was in Germany, he was talking to some guys who were naval guys that were there on leave for some reason. Anyway, they told him all about this giant railgun they had on their ship in the 80s. A railgun, a functioning railgun. But now you see all this stuff from Lockheed Martin about the railgun they're testing. Right? All the videos on YouTube of the big slag of, metal being shot out in the casing. But he's like, yeah, they had that in the 80s. He's like, they told me about it. He's like, it's not like I was fishing for it. It's just guys drinking at the bar.
Yeah.
And they told me about, this thing that they, been freshly trained on and learned to load and, just servicemen talking. So, I agree. Yeah, sure. Of course, no one was looking into that officially.
You said that was in Germany?
He was stationed in Germany. Yeah.
My parents were stationed in Germany. My parents were stationed in Germany.
Yeah, he was at Nuremberg. He was stationed in Nuremberg.
My parents refused to talk about their time in Germany.
Really?
To this day, they will not talk about it. I don't know why. I just assumed
Interesting.
that's where my mom met my dad. I just assumed that's part of why my mom doesn't want to talk about it, why my dad doesn't want to talk about it. But now that you bring that up,
That's what he said.
it's
And
kind of interesting.
that was he told me about that when I was like 10.
Hmm.
Like forever ago. Because we were talking, he and I always like to talk tech stuff. And he had brought up the concept of a railgun. I was like, what is that? He's like, well, it's a theory of using a magnet to push, another magnetic object down a rail and fire it as a projectile. I was like, is that something we could make? He's like, no, not like here at the house, no. And that's how it got into it.
Oh, okay.
I was like, how do you
Interesting.
know about that? He's like, well, it's been a thing, a theoretical thing for a long time. He's like, but I know that the U.S. Navy's already using it, and
These-
that's how I came about. And this is a guy that is not into tall tales or conspiracies. Like he's a very down to
Matter of
earth
fact.
dude. He would find all this stuff that we do here on the show interesting, but not credible.
Right.
Probably, he'd be like, show me the thing. But for him, another sailor telling about recently being trained on it, and it being in service on their ship, was convincing to him. So
The only thing I was ever able to get out of my dad from what he did in the army, and he never told me, but I was able to piece it together. So I have, a matter of fact, just yesterday, I had his old army jacket in my hand and I looked at it. There's a logo on the shoulder. I remember him explaining to me what that was. He worked in communications in the army, but it seems really weird that he would never talk about it because he knew I was interested in electronics. And I even dabbled in some CB radio when I was a kid, and he never once was like, yeah, hey, this is what I learned in the army, check this out. And then to this day I still don't know what my mom did when she was in the army, but I know they were both stationed in Germany. And I'm assuming probably Nuremberg. I don't know where all the bases are over there, but I'm sure that was the big base back then. I'm sure your parents are about the same.
yeah, I mean, I was in Germany at the time in the 80s would have been a forward listening post for Russia. Paul? No?
I had a friend in law school that spent a bunch of time monitoring Russian communications off a ship off somewhere.
I wonder if I can squeeze some information out of my dad. Maybe get him on the show.
Would be amazing.
That'd be great.
It would be great because I haven't spoken to him face to face in over 10 years. So
Oh, well.
it would be fun. It would be interesting. He did a paranormal podcast too for a little while, ironically enough. I think he only made like 5 episodes, but he did pretty good for himself for doing it 20 years ago. I think he did pretty good. His production quality was quite excellent. Studio quality microphones all around, but no cameras like we do. But still, yeah, I may squeeze him for a little information. It'd be, a miracle if I can get him to even talk to me. But maybe this will be the thread to pull to get him to come around. I don't know. Might be. It might be. Jingle jangle.
I can't hear him anymore.
No.
Too far away.
Jingle jangle. So, I had something else. I don't know why it didn't. I don't know why I didn't save. What the fornication?
What led to people thinking that they saw it in Virginia?
There were witnesses, unofficial witnesses, at the military base in Norfolk. So the naval base in Norfolk is right on the corner, so you could see down the channel, and then you can also see straight out to sea. Almost, I think it's like 240 degrees. You could see out to sea, almost completely around. And over there, back in the 40s, people were always looking at the sea,
Right.
because we, Americans, we were afraid of submarines and Nazis. So the unofficial report was I think there was maybe 2 people that were stationed, spotted the ship through binoculars. Because let me show you which mouse. So the ship has an identification number on it,
Mm-hmm.
DE173. And this is clearly mentioned in my research. I skipped over it because it seemed irrelevant at the time, but this is the only ship that's ever been in the ocean from the United States military that had this number on it.
Okay.
And it was spotted in Norfolk.
Okay. Off the coast.
Right, just off the coast. And when those officers reported to their superior officer, they came back, the ship was gone. And so it was just like, oh, they saw a mirage, or maybe it was another ship and they misread the call sign.
Right.
I feel like I want to say that there were like CB radios were picking up distress signals from the ship at the time too.
And that's why they looked.
I feel like it. Yeah, there's so many weird there's so many weird reports. It's hard to really nail down what was officially seen, because I could see, if somebody sees the ship for just a brief second and they go get the superior officer, it's gone. They just brush it off. Oh no, it's no big deal. You've been up for 12 hours. So it's not going to be officially logged, which is why they went and got their superior officer, because at the time, you're not going to log any information until your superior officer logs the information. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I guess
so
the time travel aspect come in because of the reports of people phasing in and out? Is that where the time thing comes up?
So I want to get to that, but I
Okay.
need to use the bathroom.
Okay.
I need. Yep, pee break. Here's our nightly pee break. We are adults and we are over 35, so we need bathroom breaks. All right. Hello, friends. All right, I went and got myself a fresh frosty beverage from my porch. We're talking about government regulations and honey. Um, this is something interesting. So this is something I didn't know until I started making my own mead. Um, that the government regulates honey. So for those listening that don't know, mead is a very, very traditional way of making alcohol. It's fruit and honey mixed with yeast and water. Then you let it ferment, and you get a wonderful beverage. It's think of like every Viking movie you've ever seen where they a horn.
Right.
They bring me a mead. It's the mead is the magic word. They always use the word mead. Mead is the traditional word for it. Um, Historically speaking, it was always the friars in the town that made mead because the friars also kept bees.
And kept the yeast cultures alive.
Well, here's the nice roundabout way for that is the the yeast cultures that they used in medieval times came from the honeycomb.
Oh.
So what they would do is they would get a big jar, put some fruit in it, put some water in it, and put the whole honeycomb in. And
Oh, okay.
and that would start the fermentation process. So yeast breaks down sugars, turns it into alcohol, and the fruity flavors will stay behind very subtly, of course. So this is lemon raspberry mixed with ambrosia honey, which is a very specific type of honey that I use. Um, the higher grade or the better the quality of the honey, the better the mead's going to taste. They can't. So what I was getting at was the government regulates honey. So if you go to Walmart, say, and you get great value honey, you look on the back, the ingredients, all it says is honey.
Okay.
But if you got honey from overseas, they're not legally required to put ingredients on the back because they could corn syrup with flavoring and they'll call it
Right.
honey.
Right.
So honey is the oldest anesthetic in the
Antiseptic?
world. Yes. Now, you could keep honey in a jar for 100 years
Mhm.
and it would still be good to eat. It never goes bad. It's so y'all know that I studied like survival stuff for a long while. If you get burns or deep wounds, you can pack it full of honey and cover it, and it'll keep from infection.
Some of the
you go.
oldest examples of humans eating and preserving psychedelic mushrooms. The mushrooms were found in jars of honey
Yeah, because
for the same reason.
yeah, it perfectly preserves
Preserves.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've recently come across a thread of people that make cold and flu medicine out of honey and garlic and onions.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Sounds disgusting,
It does sound disgusting, but
but I have seen that.
it works, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to try it. The honey I use is too darn expensive.
I think what it works for is to keep people from getting very close to you after you've been using it. Keeps away the flu.
Yeah.
Hard to get the flu and no one will come and talk to you.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's my little ramblings about honey. So yeah, if you ever go to the cheapest food store you could think of and look at the honey they sell, I can guarantee you if you flip it over and look at the back of the ingredients, all it's going to say is honey. It might be a
Huh.
lower grade, but
Right. Is that
the
what
stuff
makes the
that
flavor difference?
it's the flowers.
Oh,
No.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because you can have grade A honey from Walmart, and it just
Mhm.
tastes like plain honey. The stuff that I use is called ambrosia honey. It comes from the mountains, and there's only one strain of bees and one strain of wildflowers up there. So the honey comes out really, really dark, almost like molasses,
Mhm.
and phenomenal flavor. So, like I've seen people make mead, and they put like honey, then water, and then they put yeast nutrients, and then 4 different fruits, and then some spices, and then some seasonings, and all this other stuff. This was a gallon jug of raspberry lemonade, 4 pounds of honey, and 1 packet of yeast. The end.
The end.
The end. Let it sit for a month. Clarify it. I've got a couple of agents that I add for clarifying, and that's it. There's a little bit of a learning curve, sure, but I make my own. It comes out around 12 to 15%. This is somewhere around 12. This batch is about 12. And this jar will do me in.
I believe
Follow me.
that.
Yes,
Like a
it's
giant
strong. I already feel it. So like I've only drank this much, the little top, and I feel it warming me from the inside out, just like Jack Daniels would. So save yourself some money, make your own. All right. I did not find the exact portion of what I was researching earlier, but I did find another snip of evidence and research section of one of the websites I was looking at for research. This is good old Wikipedia. Before we get into this, like Aeon or Paul, you got anything you want to add, put in here? What you're feeling so far?
I kind of guess I thought, given the network TV documentaries I'd seen on this, I guess I thought that there was more
Yeah.
hard facts. Yeah, from
Yeah.
from being a kid watching the History Channel, I remembered, like I said, it was an hour-long program about this.
Right.
And there was a lot of people on there talking. It's been long enough now. I don't remember if they were like, so and so was on the boat, but I think that there was there were harbor guys, and that sort of thing that were interviewed about it, saying
I
they
feel
saw it.
like
No one from the ship, no commanding
Of course.
officers at the time,
Yeah.
nothing like that.
Yeah, no guy with an arm missing saying, "Yep, this is what the ship left me."
Yeah, nothing like that.
I feel like, and I hate to say this, so we're a little past the halfway point here. I hate to say it so early in the episode, but I feel like the wow factor of the story stuck with us from the first time we heard it up until this point. And now that we've put some serious thought into it and some serious research into it, it's not quite as sparkly as it was when we were younger, right?
Yeah. Right. I think I remember a movie or some docu something about it. I just think there are too many different variations of the story. This is beginning to sound like La Llorona, right?
Right.
It's just a
Right.
legend. And probably they were trying to do something to reduce a ship's radar signature. And there was some amazing results with that. And suddenly it turned to all this.
And there
Mhm.
may have been some amazing drawbacks.
Right?
Some people may have really gotten hurt.
Right.
Like even like you said, like I don't know, but if the whole thing did become a giant induction coil, for instance, the ship would get really freaking hot. Maybe
Yeah.
some people suffered some really bad burns. Like I said, electromagnetism does do weird stuff to the brain. I mean,
Yeah.
I like the MRI example because if you actually read a paper on people making low cost MRIs, the effect you're trying to achieve is to get all of the molecules to align in a certain spin direction
Mhm.
so that there's uniformity, and within that uniformity then you move a separate magnet and make the poles move and do this so you can detect the movement. And when you detect the movement, that's when you get an image. So if a magnet's strong enough to do that and your whole brain chemistry is electromagnetic, imagine if you cranked it up beyond imaging, the necessity for imaging, crank it up way beyond that, what happens? And you have several molecules in your body that are very magnetic compounds, iron in your blood for one.
Right.
And you can make a strong enough magnetic field to affect a puddle of blood. So if they were doing something crazy with super strong magnets, I could imagine you had people lose their shit for a little bit. But I don't know if it's as dramatic as what it's turned into.
So I just searched when was the MRI invented? And the research for the MRI started in 1950.
Interesting.
A few years after this.
Interesting.
So it makes you wonder. Maybe they played
Very
with a giant spinning electromagnet, saw this huge explosion of effect, and they thought, well, what if we turn this down a little bit? Let's scale it down and see what happens.
Right.
Because my brain went straight to, oh, we've got tons of army volunteers. Let's just pick the one with no family, and we're going to put him on this gurney and feed him in the middle of this little spinning magnet and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably killed a couple guys in the process, but so it makes you wonder, like, why did they think a spinning magnet would affect or give you an image of what's inside? Maybe this was the apex, the turning point in that process. You know what I'm saying?
It's very.
Am I talking in circles?
No. I mean, I'm with you. There a whole lot of stuff that got refined over the last, 50 decades came out of initial edge of possible research during the war, because we were trying anything that we thought could give us an edge, because it was, none of us are old enough to even have, but whatever our feeling is from the History Channel about World War II. But it was an incredibly desperate time. While it seems now like a foregone conclusion that, that we won and that we would win, and because that's sort of the story that gets told, no one felt that way at the time.
Yeah.
No one felt like it was a given. Hitler was like a steamroller that seemed unstoppable, and no one was sure how that would all turn out. Everybody was very afraid it could go either way, and some were probably even afraid that it was a foregone conclusion that he had it in the bag. So we were trying anything.
Dropping
Even
dead
some of the
bodies from planes.
Right. Even some of the that movie, I think it was called Project Mailbox. Was, I think, or Operation Mailbox was, I think, the one that League of Ungentlemanly Warfare was about. But it was 5 dudes. It was a very desperate attempt. It was a very desperate attempt. It worked, but I'll bet there were a bunch of other really desperate attempts that didn't work.
Yeah.
And people just died.
Yeah.
So to imagine that they would try something that sounds as ridiculous as this, at the time there was not a lot of research to suggest that it wasn't possible. There just wasn't any research. So, if you could dream it, we could try it. Was kind of the feat. I mean, look how much money we put into the Manhattan Project, and we weren't positive. We knew that on paper, physics said we could do this.
Yeah.
That it was possible. Whether or not we could actually pull it off was not known. We were not sure.
So here's a little more food for thought. This says, in 1950, research in nuclear magnetic resonance, electromagnetics, biophysics, biochemistry, and computer engineering began. And that's what led to the beginning of the research for the MRI scan. So that feels
Makes sense.
it feels like the Philadelphia experiment. The results from the Philadelphia experiment could have led to research in the MRI. So they probably, I'm going to put on my conspiracy theory hat. I need a hat that says conspiracy theory.
Should be on tinfoil for sure.
I do. Play around, mess around. I'll wear one next week. MK Ultra is nothing to mess with. You'll see. I got some really great videos for MK Ultra. So let me put my conspiracy theory hat on. They had this giant spinning electromagnet, had these crazy things happen. These dudes fused the sides of ships. And this entails everything that they're talking about in the research from the 1950s for the MRI. Nuclear magnetic resonance, electromagnetics, biophysics, biochemistry, and computer engineering on this ship.
Right.
Cross, all of these crazy tangents cross at this point for the Philadelphia experiment. What's to say that the Philadelphia experiment wasn't the cusp of the beginning of research for the MRI? Just saying.
And the length of that ship and the size of the hold that you would have inside if you modified it right, if you got rid of most of the decks that are not engineering decks. Have you ever, I think it's called a voxel array. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it.
So a Vauxhall array is a way to get a circle of magnets to create a monopole magnetic field inside of it. So simple description, you have this ring of let's say we're using permanent magnets, we're not using electromagnets. It's simpler to explain that way. You have all the magnets arrayed in a ring. Let's say you make all their poles face, all their positive poles face out. You get this incredibly chaotic crap inside. There's no directionality. It's just a total mess. What would be seen as noise. Now, if you take the first magnet facing up north, and then you slowly rotate each magnet slightly to the side, so that eventually they're basically turning them inward as you go, it folds the magnetic field back around on itself. And so the way you see it is you see the pole come in, move around it, and move back up through the center. So it bends the back pole, like the south pole of it, back in the direction of the north. So you get a monopole movement of magnetism from the bottom of the ring back up to the top of the ring.
Yeah.
That's what an MRI does. So if you take these rings and you make giant multi-ring ring arrays of them, and then stack them in cylinders, you can get an MRI that requires no electricity for the magnetizing part. You still need some electricity for the forget what they call it, but it's a magnet that essentially does the reading, that moves around it to get the read, to get the image. So, you could do it with electromagnets and have essentially a giant tubular Vauxhall array down the middle of this ship. I don't know what that would do. That's bigger than anyone's ever built one before, except for the one that sits around the CERN super collider. That it would be the size of the one that sits inside the CERN super collider, because what it is a giant Vauxhall array that reads atoms, individual atoms, that only has an opening about big enough for a dude to fit in, except the array is like 6 stories tall.
Yeah. It's interesting. It makes you wonder, was the Philadelphia experiment the turning point for all of these major technologies that we use today? The MRI, the super collider, it's the CERN super collider. Was the Philadelphia experiment, was that technology used for that research? It's a phenomenally interesting question. But on the flip side of that, look how small this ship is. I don't see. That is a small ship, man.
Are there any guys on? Oh yeah, there's guys around the top for reference.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call this a large ship.
No, but I mean, think of how big an actual MRI is.
Right.
And it's powerful enough to polarize all the atoms inside your body, and it's a little thing. And it's set at specific voltages. You could in theory make one the size of a normal MRI that was much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no need to for what they do, but you could make one that was probably damaging to human life tissue, would be my guess, in the same size format.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't take much, to make something very destructive on a ship, even that size.
Yeah.
But, it could also, the thing about, they were trying to, create something that bent radar or whatever, that could just be what people have assumed. Maybe they were just doing a what if experiment and they put it on the water so it wasn't on land to, where it could interfere with anything. I mean, I just have no idea. They built the first sustained nuclear reaction was built under a football field at a university, and it was a nuclear reactor, except to call it a nuclear reactor is a very large stretch of the term from what we call a nuclear reactor now.
Mm-hmm.
It was stacks of graphite bricks with nuclear material stuck in the middle of it, and a Geiger counter probes stuck in through the cracks, literal bricks, just stacked up. No like steel containment unit, none of that. There is just a
Yeah.
stack.
Yeah.
That was high technology at the time. So, I mean,
Yeah. They also
I
thought
mean, they were
lead-based paint was a good idea.
yeah, I mean, they were doing stuff. They were trying stuff. So, that seemed like, really advanced at the time.
So I want to read this little section from this website. It's labeled evidence and research.
Okay.
This is the part of what I picked out for the research. I don't know why it didn't save into my research for this episode, but let me read some of this here. It says the historian Mike Dash notes that the authors who publicized the Philadelphia experiment story after that of Jessup appeared to have conducted little or no research of their own. Through the late 70s, for example, these two researchers were often described as mysterious and difficult to locate. But it determined that their identity. They determined their identity only after a few phone calls. So they were trying to hide their identity. These alleged Philadelphia experiment researchers were. Others speculate that much of the key literature emphasizes dramatic embellishment rather than pertinent research.
Mm-hmm.
The account of the story, The Philadelphia Experiment, Project Invisibility, claimed to include factual information such as transcripts of an interview with the scientist involved in the experiment, but their work has also been criticized for plagiarism. Key story elements from the novel Thin Air, which was published a year earlier. There's also the misunderstanding of documented naval experiments. Personnel at the Fort Worth Naval District have suggested that the alleged event was a misunderstanding of routine research during World War II. One theory is that the foundation of the apocryphal stories arose from degaussing experiments, which we talked about, which makes them invisible to magnetic mines. That's a direct quote from a military document.
Meaning that, the mind can't attach to them because they're magnetically invisible. That makes sense.
Another possible origin of the story is about levitation teleportation. I did not know about levitation. And effects on human crew might be attributed to experiments with the generating plant of the destroyer USS Timmerman, wherein a high-frequency generator produced corona discharges. Although none of the crew reported suffering effects from the experiment. Never heard of that.
So, I mean, corona just means like a
Light?
well, I mean, it can, but it's a ring discharge, like corona, right?
Oh, okay,
But-
yeah.
A ring discharge. But yeah, generally you equate it to like the sun.
Yeah.
Coronal discharge is when you have those big loops that everybody loves videos of from the sun.
Yeah.
Coronal mass ejections
That's
is a
it,
big
yeah.
electromagnetic ejection that generally can affect electronics here on Earth, even with our ionosphere as a big shield. So that's interesting. They had a power plant that was actually emitting electromagnetic discharge.
Yeah.
That seems like something that got skipped over real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
If it's emitting big electromagnetic discharges, radial discharges around it, man, that's kind of a thing. I could see how you'd draw some things from that.
Right. Yeah, maybe the lines from the two have been crossed.
Yeah, maybe so.
I could see, yeah. It says observers have argued that it is inappropriate to grant credence to an unusual story promoted by one individual in the absence of corroborating evidence. It's said to have had correspondence with Jessup, the original researcher, quote unquote researcher, who has established a history of psychiatric illness and who may have fabricated the primary history of the experiment as a result of his mental illness. He later realized that the creator of the story was a family friend and a creative, imaginative loner. sending bizarre writings and claims. Okay,
That's a whole
conspiracy theory hat.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like something the government would say, doesn't it? Don't believe him. He's crazy.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really broad stroke to cover something that, one researcher, quote unquote researcher, comes out and says, "Yeah, I was there. I did this. Here's what happened." And then the government says, "Oh, don't believe him. Look, he's mentally ill."
Gotcha. Another interesting thing about the, them talking about people on the ship going crazy. There's been some accounts of not so much military warships, but large machinery putting off sub-audible frequencies, like so below human hearing in the 8 to 12 hertz range. And you call that infrasound, and
Right.
infrasound has been there's all sorts of research pointing to adverse perception effects when you have high volume. I say high volume, high energy because you can't hear it.
Right.
High energy infrasound, everything from extreme nausea, uncontrollable vomiting, to loss of control of your inner ear so you can't balance, to full-on vivid hallucination, suggestively implemented hallucination. So you say, oh, hey, let's say you pointed a table full of coupon clippings, and you're like, man, do you see those hundreds of dollars? And all the little square pieces of paper appear to that person as to be dollar bills. So an extreme enough hallucination brought on by suggestion in conjunction with infrasound. So it's possible the machinery was putting off, things like that, and all these tales came out of basically everybody on the ship seeing different things. Some people seeing people half in and out of walls, some people seeing people on fire, some people, seeing shimmers of light, except maybe it was just some machinery that was bolted down to the ship too tight and creating harmonic, audible or inaudible harmonic frequencies that were messing with their heads.
So I just looked up, what would a high-powered electromagnet do to a person? Kudos to, Google's AI overview stuff, because they really wrapped this up in a nice little package here. A high-power electromagnet, if strong enough, could potentially cause a person to experience various effects like nausea, dizziness, a metallic taste in the mouth, and even muscle contractions depending on how close they are to the magnet. Primarily due to the strong magnetic field disrupting the body's natural electrical currents. However, most everyday electromagnets are not strong enough to cause significant harm to the humans unless directly touching sensitive medical implements.
Right.
So, let's say this giant electromagnet was bolted to the ship. Back to what I was saying earlier, wouldn't it, logic says it would be considered part of the, the main structure of the electromagnet. So you would be technically standing on that sensitive medical implements. You see what I'm saying?
I mean, it could be insulated. I mean, it could be not, it could be bolted down, but on ceramic insulators or something like that. But still, they just mean being near it. In that Google synopsis there, they just mean being near it. So, like I said,
it's a giant
someone an MRI that's cranked up too high.
Yeah, it's a giant boat made out of metal.
I imagine the metallic taste is your blood coming too close
to
the
the
surface of your taste buds. Yeah.
The iron pulling out. Oh, that's horrifying.
I've had my heart pound hard enough to smell pennies.
Now that you mention that,
smell a metallic smell, because my heart was pounding so hard I could smell a metallic smell in my nose.
So many years before we met, I used to be an avid runner.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder why that's why after they call it a runner's high. You hit your runner's high and you taste pennies. and I wonder if
Yeah.
that has something to do with like the blood coming to the surface, like a rush of blood to the surface or something.
Getting
Interesting.
pushed near capillaries in the nose because smell is the predominant part of taste,
Right.
right? So, and the capillaries in your nose are pretty close to the surface. That's why it's so easy to get a nosebleed.
Right.
You know, like a scratch on the inside of your nose, and you just have like, you know, blood just running out. You know, or get punched in the nose. You don't have a visible cut, but you've broken enough stuff in there for it to run out. The capillaries are pretty close to inside your nose, and the smell receptors are all over the surface. So, yeah, if if your heart were pounding hard enough or the blood were pulled against it, yeah, I think you'd start to smell your own blood.
Interesting.
That's what I think that
Interesting
penny
indeed.
smell is. If I do
So-
if I do handstands or headstands long enough in yoga, I can smell pennies.
So let's get down to legacy. The Philadelphia experiment remains a popular piece of modern folklore. It has inspired books and movies and countless speculative discussions about government secrecy, fringe science. While debunked by mainstream science and history, it continues to intrigue those who enjoy tales of mysterious military experiments and unexplained phenomena. Where are y'all sitting on this?
Paul,
Completely false.
Oh, man. Oh, I can't wait till next week. I cannot wait till next week.
I think it's completely false because, it's like I know someone who knew someone who somebody once read something in a paper that somebody once saw, and they were a first-hand person, but they can't say who they were because of whatever. There's just
Yeah,
I just
I get it.
there's just no evidence of it. The only
Yeah.
evidence we have is there in fact was this ship. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all the evidence we have. And then we have this really interesting apocryphal stories, and there's so many different stories about what happened. You can't even it's like, okay, let's make sure we all know what the truth is so we can tell the same thing.
Right.
And it's pretty broad variations of what supposedly has happened. To me, it just doesn't ring true. It has a lot of hallmarks of fraud. There are a lot of hallmarks of fraud, and I in part make a living detecting lies, detecting patterns in stories, trying to determine, is somebody telling the truth? Are they recounting something they believe? Or have they themed a story? This just feels like a themed, like a lot of different themed stories, frankly.
Mhm.
And there probably are some interesting stuff. It wouldn't shock me the military tried to do something like this. I don't think these are the results, and I don't. There's just no evidence. There's so little evidence of this. There's
Yeah.
more evidence of Bigfoot on Polaroids than there are this.
Well, look,
Sure.
I've got an artist representation of what happened right here.
Right? Of course. I can
Obviously,
draw
it really
pictures
happened.
too. Obviously. It's on the internet, so you know it's true.
Yeah, of course. And what do you think?
Unfortunately, I mean, I love the idea. I love the story. I loved watching the thing when I was younger on TV, but unfortunately, when you really look at it and think about it, it just doesn't work
Yeah,
for me.
fair
I
enough.
guess for me, I don't doubt that we looked into all kinds of weird stuff during World War II. Had nuclear weapons not panned out, it would have been a weird story of fringe science, right?
Yeah.
Had it turned out not to work, it would have been a weird story of fringe science. Better founded than teleporting a ship at the time, physics-wise. Better founded as far as stuff we were already doing and able to do, like splitting the atom in a cyclotron, for instance. That's what set off the whole race to make the nuclear weapon, was that they could show evidence in a cyclotron, small ones that could fit in a room, of atoms splitting. We were doing it. So The question was, could you make a runaway cascade effect of that same thing? So I don't doubt that we were looking into all kinds of weird stuff. I kind of feel like the electromagnetism thing might spin out of the concept of degaussing a ship, which would have been kind of high tech for the time to try to get something to not stick magnetically to a big steel ship. Pretty futuristic at the time, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this might have spun out of that, and maybe somebody thinking they saw something offshore they didn't. I don't think that we were probably realistically looking into teleportation of a naval ship. I don't. Given how research starts, even pretty wild research, you don't start with something giant and give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right? You just started with a dude or an object, right? To try to get it from here to there. And probably their thought would have been, hey, what if we could take this warhead and just teleport it inside of their base and blow it up? Super useful. Let's move this big warship. So if you can teleport all those people, you don't need the whole ship. Right? They're there to get people across the ocean to a place, right? With supplies and all the stuff you need to get there. If you can just move all the shit, why wouldn't you just have a big steel box and just be like, boop? So I don't think we were looking into teleportation. I don't doubt that we were looking into all kinds of stuff to disrupt radar. I mean, our whole concept of stealth technology came out of research that we were doing then. And you got to remember, radar was still pretty new. You know, the one radar installation that saw the Japanese coming into Hawaii. Yeah, Pearl Harbor. It was so new that they were looking on it, they could see the planes coming, but it was so new they're like, I think it's not working. I think there's something wrong with the system, because there's no way that a whole fleet of aircraft are headed straight into Pearl Harbor. There's something wrong with the equipment. It was that new. Now, if you saw that on radar, there's no way you'd be like, probably it's not working right.
Yeah.
You know, they'd freak out because we know radar. It was a mobile truck unit. It wasn't even like an installation. It was on a truck that was mobile that they could move along the coastline. So, you know, we started using it. I'm sure as soon as we started using it, we knew other people would use it, and we wanted to know how to make it so that they couldn't use it. So I think those elements are kind of what spawned this story. I don't think that the ship disappeared and reappeared. I don't think that it levitated or moved through time. But I do think they were probably doing some stuff with electromagnets that were pretty amazing at the time. Like the concept of degaussing. This is the first time I've heard of that. I mean, I know what I know what they mean, but I didn't know that we were doing that.
Yeah.
It's kind of genius.
I didn't know either. So
they were doing some weird stuff that we hadn't even heard of.
So I'm with
For
you.
instance.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so for instance, they were doing some weird stuff that was very new at the time that we hadn't even heard of until we sat here down on the show. So they were trying all kinds of crazy stuff, and some of it was even working. So I wonder if it didn't just spiral out of that.
Right. You know, I'm with you. I do believe that they were doing stuff out there. You know, maybe they were testing electromagnets. Maybe it did cause some crazy hallucinations, and that could account for these quote unquote firsthand accounts. However, like I said earlier, I feel like the first time we heard this story was 20 plus years ago.
Yeah,
on the History Channel, and we were pretty young then. And I think the amazement, the fantasticalness of the story was so incredible. And this may or may not have been the first time we heard something about some type of military experiment.
Right.
That it seemed like, oh, geez, this is real. This really happened. You know, back 20, 30 years ago, we see something on History Channel. It's the History Channel. It's not, what's that?
The Wild Theories channel.
Yeah, what's that one?
Conspiracy channel.
What's that one newspaper with Bat Boy? National Enquirer. It's not the National Enquirer.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a show on, it's when we believe it was on cable a lot more often than we do now.
Yeah, because back in the day, we watched the History Channel in school.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it was, you knew the day at school was going to be a chill day when the teacher rolled in that TV and we were
Right.
fixing to watch something from the History Channel. Because back
Right.
then, it felt like the History Channel was a legitimate source of information.
Right.
And, it's not the National Enquirer. That was growing up for me was I would be going to the grocery store with my parents. And of course, you're stuck in line with them because self checkout doesn't exist. So you're stuck in line and you're going to sit there and look at all these crazy newspapers and magazines sitting up by the register. And I always looked at the National Enquirer. The Bad Boy articles were great. I wish I would have kept those because they probably worth some money today. But, um, that's what I would think of National Enquirer and listening to Coast AM was the fantastical fake stuff, but History Channel was the real stuff. And I was young enough to feel like the History Channel was exactly true and it was factual. So
Right.
that's why I feel like, the story was so fantastical and amazing that I believed it because where it came from at the time.
I have a great example. Did you ever happen to watch, you remember they did Mysteries of the Bible on the History Channel?
Yes.
You remember that? Did you ever watch
Yeah.
any of them?
Yes, I've actually recently rewatched them.
So I remembered as a kid feeling like the production value was very good.
Yeah.
And I've watched them again more recently and been like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is so terrible. So that's the other side of it too. Probably the first time I watched that show, I thought, wow, this is really convincing, right? And if I watched it now, I'd be like, I mean, so yeah, you're probably right.
My plan was to rewatch that History Channel episode about this, but I couldn't nail it down and honestly haven't been feeling too well the last couple days. But I will try my best to go and find this episode so I could rewatch it. But I think it's what it was. We were young, we were impressionable, and the ideas and concepts of what we formed about the Philadelphia experiment we were very young. And we saw this fantastical show on the History Channel, which we thought was true and factual.
Right.
And that
They're
formed
putting
our
forth like it is.
yeah, it formed our opinion very early on. And if you believe something for 20 plus years, and
Yeah.
somebody says, "Oh, the Philadelphia experiment," and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember watching it on the History Channel. It absolutely happened."
Exactly.
Yeah, but now that we've spent, I spent a few hours researching this, and I had trouble nailing down any concrete evidence.
Any solid, credible anything.
The only thing that I could nail down for sure was the name of the ship and the hull number.
Right.
That's it. The rest of it is hearsay, and it
Yeah.
makes me sad to say, but it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, So-
I don't think it is.
Much sad, such wow.
Yeah.
Let me see if I get a sad sound in the soundboard. No, I really don't. So I'll give you this.
Nope.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
Yeah. So we'll get better sounds in the soundboard. I had enough free time this morning. I almost set up a decent soundboard for the podcast, but I was like, you know what? I don't want to be that guy that's always hitting the horn button. This is going to be funny. Yeah. So
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate because it's a fun story. Much like the Hitler was designing flying saucers stories.
yeah.
I really would like that to be true.
Yeah, and I
Me
love
too.
I love the place that they always cite as like the place where they were doing the experiments because it's a circle and it has like the 3 towers coming up from it, and they're like, oh yeah, they did this because they'd hook it to it and then they'd practice their anti-gravitational flying. I'm like, I mean, except there's no documentation that says that. That's what you guys are reading from the architecture, and I think you're making it more complicated than it was. So, I mean, you have to remember, at the end, they were designing aircraft that couldn't land. Like, they went up with a rocket,
Yeah.
sort of glided like a plane, and then fired off all 8 or whatever rounds out of the nose of it, and then they had to parachute out of it. They're making disposable aircraft because they were so desperate. I don't think that he was deep into UFO construction
Yeah.
and research.
Well, it comes back to what I was saying a second ago. Was growing up, we watched the Hellboy movies.
Right.
And the
Right.
foundation of that story is
Yeah.
Nazi Germany dabbling in the occult. Sure,
research.
yeah, sure. He was probably grasping at straws and thought, this is a story. It's passed around. Surely there's some foundation in it. Let me see if we can dig a little deeper and see what it is. Maybe we can find some death ray or some, find a way to summon a demon from hell with a giant rock hand. I don't know.
Well, and he did
So-
seek out some weird stuff. Like he did seek out the what is the spear that pierced Jesus's side?
Oh, geez.
The Spear of Destiny, the Spear
That's
of
it.
Longinus.
Yes.
The spear of Longinus. So he did seek that out, and he did get sold one, and that one's still around, but it's known to be a fake and doesn't date right to be, to be old enough. But he did seek out weird occult
Yeah.
relics and stuff like that, which is where the whole like summoning demons thing comes from. And he had his own brand of a sort of mix of like the occult, spirituality, and masonry. Like he made his own amalgam of stuff that he liked from each thing, and pulled it into one new sort of non-religion that he was making.
Non-religion
my-
religion.
Yeah, well, because they claim not to be religious, right? Like that.
Right.
That was their whole thing. The only religion was the state. So, he didn't call it a religion, but him and his other officers practiced this sort of occultist thing. But probably not actually seriously trying to summon a demon
Yeah.
for frontline deployment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's brought up a bunch of stories about Hitler was trying to make zombies and summon demons.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
make werewolves and all that stuff. So
Well, I know he made zombies because I've seen them in Call of Duty, so I know that it must be true.
I've spent many years fighting Nazi zombies in Call of Duty. So
You know why we have Nazi zombies? And I've formed this opinion many years ago, and I'm sticking to it.
why is that?
The reason why zombie Nazis are so popular in video games because it's quick and easy to make a judgment and be like, oh, those are Nazis, I can shoot them. Pew.
Oh, same with zombies.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
They're zombies.
Oh, it's a zombie. It's evil. Shoot it.
Yes.
Right.
So if it's a zombie, but it's a person you knew, you're going to be that guy in the story that holds on to their spouse that is turned. However,
And bites him, but not the
if
Nazi.
if they're Nazi zombies, they were Nazis. We can shoot them, right?
Yeah. Right.
Bad guys.
Right.
Bad guys. Pew pew pew.
Also, I actually think some of the zombie Nazi thing comes from the extensive use of chemical enhancement with
Methamphetamines.
Nazi soldiers.
Yeah.
Methamphetamines, yeah. Lots and lots of methamphetamines for long marching orders and things like that. It was widely distributed. They had big production facilities for it. Even Hitler himself, became very addicted to it in his latter years, and accounted for a lot of his crazier ideas and paranoia late in the war. So so I could see how that guys that can march forever, they never get tired. They carry these 150-pound packs.
They can take two
They
shots
must
to the
be-
chest and keep going.
Keep going, yeah, because they're just out of their mind. Oh, of course they're undead, right? So I can see where some of that stuff comes from. Pretty easy to imagine.
All right. Well, I think we debunked the Philadelphia experiment. As sad as that makes my heart, because that's one I've held on to for many years.
I
That
was sitting here.
sucks.
I was sitting here looking really fast. I had an uncle who, my whole life, I heard had disappeared during the war in the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh.
And I was just looking in Ancestry to try to remember what information I know about him, and of course there's none. So you know how that works. When I try
Mhm.
to find something and there's nothing, then I just keep looking, get obsessed with it. So there's probably a little
Dig it up.
more, probably a little more information than that seems to me. But many of the family members that even knew the story have died. So I'm gonna have to go see what I can just find.
Bermuda
But
Triangle would be a good one too.
the apocryphal family member stories are maybe not as helpful anyway.
There was just recently I saw on TikTok somebody had posted like a time lapse video of all the flight plans around the Bermuda area, and all of these planes, nice, beautiful arcs, nice, smooth trajectories. You know, about what you'd expect for an airplane today.
Mm-hmm.
And then it zoomed into the planes going through the Bermuda Triangle, and they go like, eh, 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 like 10,
Oh,
15
really?
of them, trajectories all over the place.
I wonder if
So
that's weather.
I don't know.
Like,
It's
you
the
know how they're
Bermuda
like,
Triangle, man.
yeah, this is your captain speaking. We're gonna drop down about 10,000 feet to avoid some turbulence. Please enjoy your ride. Everybody fasten your seatbelts. All right, have a nice time. You know, like they're always like trying to get out of the turbulence. So they're gonna go up,
Right.
you know, another 5,000 feet, or you know, we're gonna drop down another, you know, 3,000. They're always coming over the thing saying that when it's bad. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it is a bad center for weather for sure.
I
Which I
need
wonder if that's not where the legend comes out of.
a small dry erase board in here so I could start making notes when these things come up, because I will forget. I will remember MK Ultra because
You're gonna forget Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like the Bigfoot story. It's been done and done
Yeah.
and done.
It has. MK
You know-
Ultra though was a long program, and that's another one that comes up on, you know, of all places, History Channel a lot.
So I did. So when I relocated from Arkansas to where I am now, I had a little trouble finding a job. So initially, what I would do is I was a handyman and a big tourist location nearby, and I was doing that during the day for like 6 hours a day, and I would come home and I would make Facebook Reels.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my best Facebook Reels were about MK Ultra, and I will gladly show them next week on the episode because they are so good, they are so convincing that it, I went from being a nobody on Facebook to being monetized in 6 months because so many people were watching these videos.
There's a lot of good stuff on MK Ultra. That is one that, you know, got declassified, and there's quite a lot of actual information, even fun videos. And actually there's one clip that I hear in the genres of music that I listen to, the genres of electronic music I listen to, where this young woman is like, can't you see it? It's in the air. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. And it's someone being it's a videotaped interview of somebody on LSD in one of the MK Ultra, you know, one of the many experiments. But she has this long thing, you know, and at the end she's like, I think I just feel sorry for you. And the guy's like, why do you feel sorry for me? He's like, because unless you experience it, I can't even explain it. I can't even tell. I can't tell you. You'll never know. And it gets sampled into music like a lot. I can think of like 5 tracks that sections of her you know, ramble get stuck into. And they have stuff where they're giving it to artists and seeing how their sketches change progressively over the hours as they move in and then back out of the trip. It's a big body of work. There's also a lot of awful stuff that go along with MK Ultra too.
Oh yeah, I've been saying for years that Britney Spears got messed up on MK Ultra.
You think that's what it was?
Absolutely.
I thought it was pop stardom and no support for the stuff that you'd run into as a giant pop star. She was like 18 when she started. blew up huge, and there was like no support for like how do you manage your life and still feel like a real person when you're also
Yeah.
this thing person on TV.
I will share one of my reels with you before next week because I love this reel. It's one of my very favorites. Check this madness out. It's absolutely crazy. Can you hear the audio?
Mm-hmm.
Live TV, bro.
Huh.
So what it was is it was near Christmas time, and one of the other hosts said Holy Ghost, and the thought behind it was she says Holy Ghost, and as soon as she says it, watch him. He just turns and looks at the camera. And they say
Huh.
that Holy Ghost was his trigger word. And dude held this position for like a minute and a half, and then went right back to the conversation he was having before he froze.
So these aren't the things in MK Ultra that I'm thinking of. The
So
stuff that I'm thinking of are them giving it to like there's a black and white video, field video of them giving it to British soldiers out on a field training exercise.
uh-huh.
And they give it to one of the groups and tell they have them navigate from point A to exfil, and they can't read the map, they can't figure it out. Some of them are like climbing trees trying to like pet the squirrels, like it's just total disarray, and they just completely collapse as far as a unit before they're even like a couple hours into it. And I think eventually at one point they're all just sitting down on the ground like fucking with leaves and playing with the dirt. Like they've completely they've lost their fake firearms, but they've lost their firearms along the way. Some have lost some of their clothing. Like they just complete and total collapse of they forgot completely they were on a training mission. Like the whole thing just completely fell apart.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one where they dropped him in the jungle?
It's a forested area. I don't know if it's a jungle or not. It's hard to tell from the black and white that
I think I know
saw.
what you're talking about. We'll touch on this next week. It's going to be.
They start out good, and then just total collapse, which was funny because I was like, so what you need to do, I guess, then is instead of spraying the trees with Agent Orange, you just need to aerosolize LSD across the enemy lines, and you're like golden.
See if you can find that video and send me the link, and we'll watch it next week. It's going to be a good one. I am passionate about MK Ultra because I'm convinced they're still using it to this day. Absolutely.
Also, in my own personal past experience, I don't know that I would consider LSD a great vehicle for implanting ideas into somebody's mind. I think there's many other very effective chemicals out there that would work very well for that. I don't think that tryptamine-based psychedelics are one of them, personally.
Yeah, so LSD is the foundation of the MK Ultra program, but it's not necessarily what's being used. We'll talk about that next week.
I mean, they were researching mind control, but yeah, that's where it starts, is with, trying to use these psychedelics as a way to change somebody's thought patterns, and it turns out you can change their thought patterns, you just can't change them predictably.
Right. What was the
They're certainly changed, but you don't get any sort of predictable result, or maybe anything that you actually wanted.
What was the movie?
Manchurian Candidate?
That's it. Yes. Yeah, that was a good one. That was a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good one. I think
there's some great forms of hypnosis that probably that are multisensory hypnosis techniques that came out of MK Ultra that are really effective at suppressing a memory, like altogether, like erasing it from somebody's mind. I don't know about implanting.
Right.
I don't know
Well-
what their effectiveness is for implanting, but
Well, this will be our initial test because we've spoken the unspeakable words MK Ultra, and we'll see if the government decides to take our videos down before next week. We'll see what happens. We're on multiple platforms try to keep up, United States. But you know, I hate to say it, but Philadelphia experiment's a bust. I think we
Yeah.
debunked it. It's a
a
great
nope.
story, but it's a no. It's a no. Hold on, wait. I got a sound for that. Wait. It's a big fat.
Nope.
Yep. So, Ann, you want to take us out with some closing thoughts, good sir?
Sure. So, once upon a time, when the U.S. fought wars, it was pretty straightforward, right? Our great invention in war, for the U.S. at least, when we were fending off the British, was the British came in ranks, and we were like, "Hey, that's really great when you just got a lot of bodies to throw at it. We don't have as many bodies. How about we have rifled barrels and shoot at you from the trees where you can't see us?" Guerrilla warfare, and it saved the day. Yeah, and it saved the day for us. You know, total out of the box thinking at the time for weaponry. Now you'd be like, well, yeah, duh. Why would you not hide behind cover?
Yeah. Which turned us into a quote unquote great nation.
Right. You know, but it was that sort of out of the box thinking that sort of led to, you can think of that as the first, revolutionary idea that led to the, military superpower that covers the entire world currently. And before World War II, and even in World War One, we still had commissioned ships that were not steel. Think of that.
Yeah.
When ships were wood and men were steel,
Yeah.
we still had, and even today, they still train people on the sextant. Should we lose GPS? Should we lose all the stuff?
Yeah.
In the 70s, GPS was still buggy, and
Yeah.
their radius for pinpointing something was within a couple of miles. Right now, it's within a yard.
Yeah.
To give you an idea. So, through the years, we've had incredible advancements, mostly through deciding the thing that we needed, and we would try to research that. Is that a possibility? The Manhattan Project, nuclear-powered ships, space lasers, railguns, UAVs, all that. But in between all the stuff that we know about and the stuff that was successful, there's bound to be some even weirder stuff that we just tried kind of like throwing spaghetti against the wall just to see what would happen. Because there was money and there was motivation and there was a need.
Right.
Some of it was bogus. Some of it didn't happen. Some of it did happen and led to wilder stories about what happened versus what probably really happened. And in all this muck and mire of steel men and wooden ships, space lasers, and Nazi UFOs, there's a middle path. And that middle path is what's more likely to be the truth of Occam's razor. And if you would like to step out of the muck and mire of the what might be and what could have been, you should follow us.
Beyond the shadows.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
A creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Why, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Feel the shadows.